Welcome to the Town of Fairfield's Board of Finance Public Open Forum for the budget for fiscal year 2018. On behalf of the Board of Finance, I would like to welcome everyone and ask you to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. We have some esteemed students from our public schools that will lead us in the pledge this morning. So go ahead, kids. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we had the biggest kid of all, our head of Park and Recreation, Mr. Calabrese, actually helped to organize the kids, so thank you very much, Mr. Calabrese. In way of starting, I want to introduce the esteemed members of my board. First of all, my name is Tom Flynn, and I have the distinct honor and privilege of being the chairman of the Board of Finance. It's not an honor or a privilege that I take lightly. I've been doing it for a number of years with my colleagues, and I'm very proud to sit amongst them. To my extreme left is Mr. David Becker, and Mr. Christopher DeWitt, and our Vice Chairman, Mr. Jim Brown. This is Mr. Kevin Hopkins, Mr. John Matola, and Mrs. Sheila Marmion. Mrs. LeClaire, who serves as our secretary, is a CPA, and this is her busiest time of year, and I'm sure Mr. Walsh will be here shortly. Before we get started, I want to go through some rules of engagement so that we move quickly and that everybody who wants the opportunity to speak can speak this morning. We have a podium up here to my right, your left. That's where you would make your public comments. You would sign in beforehand here, and we need your name and your address so our secretary can get it all on the record so that we know exactly who was speaking. We're going to limit public comment to 2 minutes per person today. We have a lot of people. We have about 2 hours to go through, and our goal is to hear you. Now, we've made this very specific that we want to hear from taxpayers, residents, and electors of the town of Fairfield, the people that actually pay the bills and the people that are part of our democratic process. It's our opportunity to hear from you what you think about not just our budget, but what's going on at the state level. Also, at these meetings, we've had a lot of public officials who want to speak. Definitely want to hear from them as well. However, I would ask, particularly those public officials who have the opportunity to vote on this budget at various times, that they wait and allow the public to speak first and then have their say. Because it's very important that we hear from the people that don't actually get to vote on the budget directly, and then we'll hear from you. Now, we've been holding these public forums for about 8 or 9 years, and it's something that our board has become very proud of. And it's become actually a symbol of Fairfield and the symbol of our democratic process. I want to make sure that we maintain decorum and respect for one another throughout this process. We're dealing in highly charged emotional times, and as we can see at our federal level, our political discourse isn't always respectful of one another. And we want to do that. We want to maintain that. I ask that the students be brought up here this morning to say the Pledge of Allegiance, not just because it's a nice way to start a public meeting, but also to remind us all that there are students in the room, and there's the public and students that are home. And they're watching very intently how we treat each other, how we discuss very important issues, and how this process works. So I would ask, when you come up to the podium to discuss whatever your topic is, and by the way, this is comments, not questions, we will opine back if we hear a factual error or if there's something that really strikes us that we want to respond to. But I would ask that we keep it unpersonal, that we don't attack one another, and that we don't attack people's motives who might have opposing views. That's very important in our democratic process. And if you watch the way our board conducts itself on a day-to-day basis, that's how we treat each other, even when we disagree. We can disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable. Fair TV is here today. I'm not sure whether they're sending out this live, but it will be broadcast. Just be aware of that. And I wanted to address, and I apologize for going on and on here, But given the tenor of our times, I wanted to address exactly what's confronting us. The budget this year is very, very different. We're lucky to have a very experienced Board of Finance here with probably over 60 years of experience all told in managing or helping to manage the finances of the town. I myself have been on this board for 12 years. I have never seen a budget year like this. Typically, we either have a smooth budget process, where this room is virtually empty, or we have a specific issue, one specific issue, whether it be a large tax increase being proposed or presumed reductions in expenses or services, and we speak to that one issue. This year, we have, as someone called it, the perfect storm. With the governor's budget proposal, which is a direct hit to this town financially of $14 million on a $290 million budget. We have both a large tax increase being proposed of 4.5% and a reduction in services of several million dollars in several areas of our budget. So we truly do have the perfect storm. Now, important to note, in front of us is the First Selectman's proposed budget, which takes into account that $14 million issue. This budget has not yet been voted on by the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance. And I'll get into that process just a little so that everybody is aware of what it is. But that $14 million is right now the number we have from the state of Connecticut. The state will not finish its budget process until after the town has completed ours, believe it or not. So we will not have final information from the state related to what that budget looks like. Now, there's been comments made that it's a false number or that it's ginned up for whatever reason. Quite frankly, we took the unprecedented step of having our state delegation kick off our entire budget process earlier this year to address exactly that. That $14 million includes one $9 million adjustment with the state pushing pension monies or funding down to the town level for the state teachers. That's an unfunded number that's developed over many, many years and many generations. The state didn't fund it, and now they want to kick at least 30% of it, the $9 million being 30% of the $27 million they say they put in each year, or need to put in each year, back to the taxpayers. That is officially the governor's proposal. Our state delegation has said that they don't think that'll pass. They don't think in that form that it's got enough support to pass. That being said, they also have indicated that the state has significant financial issues that'll go on for years, and that the money has to come from somewhere. So while that proposal might not pass, there may be another proposal, equally as unpalatable, that comes our way after the legislative session, because they have to find the money somewhere. So we're dealing at our level with the best available information, but far from certain information. But no, it's not ginned up, it's not false. This is an official proposal, and I have been quoting as saying it's an attack on our town. And it is. We spend over $260 million as a community to the state every year. In direct financing back, we're getting $7 million or under, and an additional bill for $9 million. That's where we stand today. And even if that $9 million goes away, as we hope it does, there's still $7 million out there that could be in play. And that's what we're dealing with. That's what we're all confronting. This is not a one-term issue or a one-year issue. This will be an issue for quite a period of time as the state figures out its own financial house. Now, we'll have time to address that. We'll hear your comments, and I don't want to spend too much time, and my board will have their opportunity, our board will have that opportunity to comment back. I did want to step through very briefly what our process is, okay, our town budget process. Because based on the number of emails we're getting, there's misinformation out there. Whose budget this is, where we are right now, what is the Board of Finance proposing, okay? Here's how the budget process works. In the fall of last year, all the town departments, including the Board of Education, started to put together their budget from the ground up, based on the contracts they've signed, based on prior year, based on the services that they're asked to provide to the town. That starts in the September-October timeframe. Board of Education might even start a bit earlier than that, right? In January, the Board of Education hears the budget that's put forth by the superintendent, and the Board of Education makes whatever adjustments they're going to make, and they approve that budget. That happens in early January, late January, right? The first selectman works with the town department heads. He puts together his budget, and he incorporates what the Board of Ed has sent him into an overall town budget. And he then actually adjusts their budget. So their budget request has already been adjusted by the first selectman. That budget, in its entirety, is submitted to this board, and then during the month of March, we hold a series of hearings where we hear from all the department heads, as well as the Board of Education, as well as the first selectman, on the proposed budget that's before us. That's where we are right now. After our hearing's complete, later next week, that budget first goes to the Board of Selectmen, where they will have their first vote on that budget. They will vote, and then 2-3 days later, that budget comes back before our board as adjusted, and we get to vote on that budget only at that time. On the town side, which is every department other than the Board of Education, we can adjust things on a line-item basis. We can say, don't buy this in Park and Recreation, don't fund this in the fire department, don't do this in the police department, whatever we want to do, or we can add to it and say, do this, do more of that, add to this area. We cannot do that at the Board of Education. So we've started to get, after the other night's meeting at the Board of Ed, please don't cut the music program. Please don't cut freshman this. Please don't cut a school. Please don't do that. We have no say in that. None. We get to vote on one number. How that number is eventually divvied up and used by the education community is at the sole discretion of the Board of Education. So while we're happy to hear today of what programs are important to the education community, to the teachers, to the students, and we welcome all public comment, please just realize that part of our process. After we get done with the budget and vote on it, it goes to the RTM. Then they will have the final vote on the budget, approving it, and send it back to us where we will set the mill rate, that tax rate, for all of us in early May. And again, remember the timing. We will not have a final state budget by the time we have to make those decisions. So that's the process. That's what we're confronted with as a community. We all thank you for coming out. We look forward to hearing from you today. We're going to do 2 minutes a person. I ask that to the extent you can, don't be redundant. Come up with something new. And this year, I'm going to ask a personal favor. Right now. Right. Exactly. Personal nature, I'm going to ask. This would be really, really helpful. You know how you go through the airports and they always tell you if you see something, say something? Right? That's the whole thing. If you see something, say something. We're only 9 people. We live in the town just like you. We're volunteers, right? You guys might see something in the way the town's spending their money that we don't see. If you do, let us know. Tell us. Give us an example. Don't get personal and say Officer Joe was doing this and Billy's doing that, right? But let us know, hey, can you look into this? Can you look into that? Now, I'm not saying we can get it all done by the end of the budget process, but you are the customers. You're the eyes and ears. And the more people we have looking around saying, how are we spending our money? Or where do we have opportunities to do it more efficiently? Or where can we gain additional revenue? The better off we're all going to be. So if I can ask you, and we'll take notes on this, to let us know what you're seeing out there. And I'm not asking for 10 minutes of it, but for letting us know what we're going to see out there, we would greatly appreciate it. So I thank you for your time. I thank you for your attention. Best of all, I'm going to shut up now and turn it over to you guys. The sign-in book is right here, and thank you very much.
Yeah, can I suggest that we sign in after we speak, just to keep things rolling? Okay, so if this mic is working, I hope. Thank you for your service, for your diligence, and for this opportunity to express our opinions. You will hear many opinions today. Some will be more memorable than others based on the passion with which they're delivered. Your job as our representatives is to decide dispassionately what is in the best long-term interests of our town. When you do this, please remember two things. First, as Mr. Flynn just stated, the effects of the state's fiscal crisis are just beginning. This is not a passing storm. This is climate change. Second, Fairfield is already in trouble. All cities and towns must compete to attract and retain people who want to live there. They compete based on the desirability and the affordability that they offer. The single most important vital sign of how they're doing is what's happening to their home values. Real home values cannot rise unless more people want to move in than want to move out.
Sorry. Excuse me. Sir. What are you doing? Do it up front? Yes, that's
It's okay. I repeat that real home values cannot rise unless more people want to move in than want to move out. It is a really bad sign that home values are declining here in Fairfield. Our tax base is down 10% from its 2011 peak. Over that same period, our tax levy is up 21%, and it will be up 26% if the First Selectman's proposed budget is adopted. So just in the last 6 years, our real tax rate, which is dividing tax levy by tax base, is up 34%, and it will be up 40% if we raise the mill rate by another 4.5%. Spending and taxes cannot continue to grow faster than the rate of inflation. Unless this trend reverses, Fairfield's home values and its tax base will continue to decline. If we do not live within our means, it is only a matter of time before everything that we love about Fairfield will be destroyed, including our fine school system. Thank you very much.
Matthew Husselman, 317 Pansy Road. In the past, Fairfield taxpayers has accused our public schools of having champagne tastes in our budget. Well, I can assure you this year is not about champagne taste. This is about simply trying to keep our head above water. In the list of possible cuts that might have to happen to the budget this year, the Superintendent Jones mentioned closing a high school, vastly increased school sizes, and other incredibly draconian cuts. Is having 30 kids in a classroom champagne taste? Is closing a high school champagne taste? I can assure you, no matter what you think of the housing market in Fairfield now, if someone who is looking at a house sees the headline, one high school to close because of budget cuts in Fairfield, you'll have a better chance of selling an I Heart Dan Malloy shirt in Fairfield than selling your house in Fairfield. The Board of Finance is right. They only have a say on one number. But I mean, when you make cuts of this size, you're not going to make the savings in paper versus plastic. It's going to be hard, nasty cuts that are going to vastly affect our children's futures and their possible futures. What seems unbelievable to me is that we're talking about these cuts that might not come down, the pension bill might not come down for the state, but Fairfield taxpayer is still going to get its mythic 1.5%, like it came down from Moses in a stone tablet from Mount Horeb. You're not robots. You can make adjustments. We cannot make this possible cut that might come, and we cut $6 million from the budget. That's going to be unbelievable. There was a parent last night at the Board of Ed meeting on Thursday. She talked about the aquatics program. She was in tears, literally talking about what it meant to their child. These are not, you could say cut all you want. These cuts will have massive effects on our housing values, on our family values, and you cannot make cuts of this size, especially before you even know what the state is doing. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for your service. My name is Allison Power, 1027 Merritt Street. This year, the Board of Finance faces some very difficult decisions, especially with the financial restraints that you have. But if we want to continue to be a strong town and a strong community, we need to have a strong public school system. You've heard a lot from the taxpayer perspective, and now you need to hear from the parents. The parents who chose to live in Fairfield for the strong public school system. As parents, we firmly support the superintendent's budget as is without cuts, as we know that those cuts will harm not only our children but our community. We urge you to look to other areas to make those cuts, and we truly hope that you will make decisions in the best interest of our students. Thank you for your consideration.
Good morning. My name is Margaret Horton, 20 Longdean Road. 3 years ago, my husband and I made the decision to move, we put ourselves into debt to move from Bridgeport to Fairfield, in large part because of the public school system. We had started a family and we wanted our children to be in these excellent Fairfield public schools. Our oldest is slated to start kindergarten at Sherman this fall. I just had his kindergarten registration appointment, and I almost felt like crying because it felt like what we had finally, what we'd been working for was finally here. We were finally going to be able to take advantage of the Fairfield schools. It's been crushing this week to think that these schools might lose their luster because of these proposed budget cuts. Quite simply, this budget cut for the education is bad for business, and I believe ultimately will hurt the town's economy. The public schools are one of the top reasons that families like my own moved to Fairfield. If our schools lose the programs that are on the chopping block, they'll no longer be as competitive as those in neighboring towns, Westport, Trumbull, Monroe. Suddenly our great restaurants, our beautiful beaches aren't going to make a difference. Families are not going to look to move into Fairfield. Families like mine move here for the schools, and once we're here, we contribute greatly to the economy of the town. I'd urge you to remember that the cuts in education are just a short-term solution to a long-term problem, and this short-term solution will massively and negatively impact the long-term health of our economy. Thank you.
Excuse me, good morning. John Levinson, 883 Harbor Road. Our town and state is less desirable than in past generations, and this does not appear to be, as Mr. Flynn said, a short-term issue. Job creation is among the worst of any state. Students in Fairfield Public Schools peaked 6 years ago and will trend down for years. That's according to the projections on the Board of Ed site. And our town's birth rate is lower than forecast just a couple of years ago. Home values are well off their peak, particularly in the top 5% of all homes, where Fairfield gets a fifth of its tax base. Hartford has started to transfer costs to towns, and indications are that this will be going on for a long time, where we will be getting much less from Hartford and giving much more every year. Regionalization of services may finally be here after a lot of talking, but it appears that we may be the wealthiest town in our region, which is not a good thing from a pure economic standpoint. It's time for true leadership. We can't simply fine-tune our budgets as we've been doing for all the years I've been watching this. We have to restructure operations and improve and modernize our operations. You can restructure with optimism and with a goal of reinventing which services we choose to deliver and how each one is delivered, how our taxes are collected, how we charge for services, how our administrative overhead at our schools and our Board of Ed offices are allocated. Redistricting of our schools is an issue that needs to be considered. If we don't start down the restructuring road, we will be painfully making minimal annual cuts to our programs and budget for a long time, and they will be painful, every one of them. The town, probably under the BOF, should establish a subcommittee to identify and drive, not just identify and recommend, but to identify and drive restructuring opportunities. This cannot wait for the strategic plan, which our first selectman has just finally committed to starting, and I know the BOF has been pushing for a long time. So do not wait for the strategic plan. Please make the structural changes as needed. Thank you.
Hi, Herb Limecooler, 83 Spruce Street. I serve as the volunteer coordinating director of a group called Fairfield Senior Advocates. That's an organization dedicated to making Fairfield affordable and desirable for seniors, for keeping seniors in Fairfield. First, thanks to all of you for your extensive and extended service to our town. We all appreciate it. We volunteer our own time because seniors are a key part of our community, but also because keeping seniors improves everyone's finances. I want to repeat that. Keeping seniors improves everyone's finances. Now, about 1.5% of our town budget goes directly for seniors. And so we're talking here about tax relief for program-eligible property owners, for the Bigelow Center, for senior-related contributions to nonprofits. And while seniors also derive benefits from police, fire, paving, and so forth, we estimate they contribute about 15% of our residential taxes, or about $40 million annually. To keep seniors, our organization's been very active in Hartford, working hard to repeal the income tax on Social Security, to modify the uncompetitive estate tax structure that we have in Connecticut, and to achieve more equitable taxes on pensions. But we can quantify this. We can quantify that the greatest value in keeping seniors is not the preservation of their retirement income taxes, or their sales taxes, or their gas taxes. The largest savings is keeping our property taxes lower than they otherwise be by keeping the citizens who pay a disproportionate amount of our costs. Now, we understand the state's budget challenges and the resulting pressures on our town's budget, but seniors got 0.3% last year in their Social Security COLA, and the year before that, they got 0. How can we ask them to pay 4.5% more? How can we ask them to pay any more than an inflationary adjustment? Our finances as a town and as a state hinge on keeping our seniors. Ours need a message that they matter. Thanks.
My name's Gordon McKenzie. I'm a resident of Fairfield, a senior, a member of Fairfield Senior Advocates, a taxpayer, and a voter. About 2 years ago, I was involved with a survey that resulted in responses from about 700 seniors here in Fairfield. We asked what were the major issues they would like to see changed in order to keep them in Fairfield, and not including the weather. We were expecting a scattered response covering items like senior center changes, medical care improvements, more cultural activities, and of course, financial relief. In fact, the overwhelming response was almost all financial. 1, relief from constant increases in town property taxes, while many of them were living on fixed incomes. Relief from Connecticut state income taxes, which apply to all retired income, right from Social Security payments through pension income, 401 and 403Ks, IRAs, and annuities. And 3, from a smaller number of responses, relief from the burdensome estate tax, which you may know is driving many well-to-do citizens out of our state to Florida, and increasingly, those who stay out of our state for 6 months and a day to avoid state income tax and estate tax. It is vitally important, as my colleague Herb just mentioned, for you to remember that when seniors pay property taxes, they are in effect subsidizing the town's education budget, which is some 65–70% of the total budget. To put it a different way, they don't have school-age children, yet generally most are paying full property tax rates. Their actual expense to the town is much less than what they contribute to the town's revenue. When a senior decides to leave Fairfield, it is a real hit to the town financial budget. This is true at the Fairfield town level and a significant hit to the state's budget as well. As a state, we are losing population, and while the net loss may seem modest, 0.2%, they are the third worst in the country, right under West Virginia and Illinois. And you need to look at the gross figures, which show that for every 3 people living in Connecticut, 2 are replaced by immigrants from other countries who generally have a lower income and therefore lower tax payments. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Christine McMaster-Sander. Hi, Christine McMaster-Sander. I addressed you the other evening. I am both a teacher and a parent in the district. So as to not repeat what has been said, I did want to bring in the newspaper article that highlighted Greenfield Hill as a new affordable neighborhood on March 12th. And I wanted to mention that half of the article was devoted to talking about the statistics of our town schools. And that did remind me of my journey to Fairfield from New York City. And when we were looking for a place to live along the Gold Coast, and we considered Westchester and neighborhoods closer to the city, we considered Wilton, Weston, and other towns in our area, there were a lot of reasons why we chose Fairfield. And some of them included how many steps you take from your door to get to the train to get to work. And I do want to remind this board that we are an hour and 20 minutes away by train each way, so a lot of our fathers and mothers spend 3 hours a day on transportation to be able to afford to live here. And they do that mainly because they come here to raise their children because of our public schools. And I know I'm not from here, I'm from Florida, and no disrespect to the previous presenter, but you've been moving to Florida for a very long time. But I do believe in affordability for everyone, whether they have children in school and out of school, but I do understand that our school system is an economic driver for being able to sell our houses. Every house I've sold in Fairfield was purchased by a homeowner that came and moved in with children. So please, when we support our Dr. Jones budget, and as a teacher, I understand it is a lean budget. I teach in your system. I see what goes on inside the walls, and we do a great job, and I'm grateful to be there. So please support our educational budget. Thank you.
David McKenzie, resident of Fairfield for 39 years. And a senior, which is obvious. Thank you, Tom. The financial problems of the state are going to impose a long-term burden on the town, and we will have to adjust. It's time to begin real belt-tightening. It's time the BOE stopped increasing budgets and building schools with excess capacity when Fairfield has a shrinking student population. It's time we stopped endorsing union contracts that give far better benefits than realized by the private sector or the Fairfield taxpayers who fund them. It's time we stopped wasting money on construction projects that overrun their budgets because we didn't have the professional supervision needed to manage the process. It's time the BOE started making cuts in unnecessary administrative overhead instead of looking for cuts in student programs. It's time the BOE recognized that 65% of the budget goes to education, yet 30% of the households have children in the schools. And that 30% has an obligation to the remaining 70% to spend judiciously. It's time we recognize that people are leaving Fairfield not only because of the growing tax burden from the state, but also a town budget which has increased almost over twice as fast as the inflation rate over the last 20 years. It's time we build a budget that is based on what we can spend, not on what we want. It's time we recognize that seniors represent over 16% of Fairfield and are important contributors to this community. Controlling taxes is an important part of keeping them here. Thank you, and thank you for your work.
Shannon Jorshell, 128 Lockwood. I understand that communities throughout Connecticut are being affected by drastic cuts, and I sympathize with our local leaders who are caught between a rock and a hard spot because of state budget constraints, and I thank you for your service. I am a taxpayer in Fairfield. My family moved here, and we moved specifically to Fairfield rather than neighboring towns because of the school district's good reputation. I come from an out-of-state school system that failed my children. On multiple occasions, that school district failed to fill my daughter's academic needs. Each time I was told that the school did not have resources. I believe that each of us in Fairfield have a responsibility to each other. We are obligated to keep our community thriving. At the core of a healthy community is the common understanding and dedication towards education. I strongly believe that it is our duty as human beings to make sure that the needs of our most vulnerable are met, whether being seniors or, in this case, our children. In lieu of our leaders finding alternative revenue sources or the state allocating the budget differently, I accept that my taxes may increase so the quality of our schools is maintained. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm the lady that broke down at the meeting last week, but I'm going to hold it together today to just say, my name is Ellen Blumberg, Fairview Avenue, and I just moved here in May from Manhattan, where I was a resident for 15 years. My husband still makes the commute to his office, and we are that family that had a healthy budget to move to another town outside of Manhattan. And we chose Fairfield because of the schools. And we get here, yes, and we get here, and now I feel like, what's happening? And I'm flabbergasted, and I broke down the other night because I couldn't believe that it just feels like the families and children of this town are being attacked. And these aren't programs, my sons are 6 and 1. They're not in orchestra yet. They're not in special programs that the school's offering. They're just kids going to school. But if my neighbor needs that program is important. If the person across the town needs that bus to get to work, that bus is important. And we are all here to help. And I'm sick of seniors and parents fighting because there has to be some kind of middle ground where we're all going to get a little bit better. And the most important part is our children are going to be the people sitting here in 20 years fighting for us. And if you turn your back on them now, where are we going to be? And a senior should know that more than anybody. As a homeowner in this town, I'm happy. I understand what a tax increase is. I understand things get more expensive. I have never walked into the store and they said, oh, the best thing we have this year is 20% less. Isn't that amazing? It doesn't happen. Costs go up. We are here to help. We are here to volunteer. We are here as parents to give back to what the town needs. And I'm just sick of families being attacked. It needs to stop, and Fairfield needs to be the model to say, this is what we were in, this was our mess, and this is where we rose above. We need to be the model, not the victims anymore. Thank you.
name is Lisa Carpenter. I am, my address is one, I'm sorry. Okay, is that better? Okay, my name is Lisa Carpenter, 168 St. Mortar Drive. I am a taxpayer, I am also a parent, and I am a teacher here in Fairfield. And I do want to say, I think it's important to thank you for the service that you do, your heart for you to do it. I appreciate your energy. I also appreciate the breadth and depth of the difficult decisions that you have to make. As you mentioned, we're in an unfortunate time statewide with the budget situation. And it comes at an unfortunate time in Fairfield as well. You said you wanted to have legs on the ground about what's going on in Fairfield Public Schools right now. We are coming into a place where we have new administrators, new leadership, and they are bravely and tenaciously looking at the challenges that we currently face in our school system, and they are not only addressing it with ideas, but with actions. We also have teachers who are stretched to continue to provide the education, the quality of education in Fairfield that we currently have. Teachers in Fairfield are not only Fairfield Public School employees, but they are also volunteers, volunteering a lot of their own time to make sure that our students in Fairfield get what they need. And I'm here today to ask you to, as you make your decisions, to keep in mind that this is happening at a time when we need more and not less, to continue to provide the quality of education that we do to our students. I thought it would be important to have a voice of a student here at this meeting today. So I brought a poem that one of my students wrote, and I hope the metaphor is not lost. It's called Playground, where the children play and the bluebirds sing, and the trees are perfect for climbing on. You can play all day and sing all night and cuddle trees and prevent them from dying. Swing and spin until we all fall down. How perfect is the playground.
Good morning. My name is Sue Cronin, and I have been a homeowner in Fairfield for 18 years, and I think I'm the first single mom to come up here this morning. I've raised my son here on my own. Thank you. And he has grown up through the Fairfield Public School systems while I've held it together to pay taxes and flood insurance after Hurricane Sandy when it increased. It's been tough, but it's been great. I wouldn't do it any other way. And I have to say, the educators in this town are phenomenal. And the seniors are too, because I also take care of my 83-year-old mom. I have a little bit of a different perspective. I think that we should band together and take this whole message back to Hartford. Right? Thank you. Why should we, the seniors that are phenomenal, our educators, everybody that's invested in this town as taxpayers, why should we go through this pain and just continue to see people moving out and out and out because they can't afford to live here anymore? Governor Malloy says, you know, jump this high, and we're like, okay, well, how high do you want us to go? Absolutely not. Let's put up a shield, band together, this is a town of 60,000 people, and say, no, we're not going to do it. We hire attorneys, we sue the state, whatever it takes. And the other thing that I think we need to keep in mind is this is a state that has sanctuary cities. And that means that ultimately we're going to lose federal funding because Malloy won't come off of that point. And so he's going to pass that back to Fairfield and other towns as well. So it's going to get worse. So that's all I'm saying is thank you, educators in Fairfield. It's a great town to live in, great town to raise a child, single parent or not. Let's band together, maybe form a commission, and stand up and say, no. To Hartford.
Hi, my name is Lucy, and I am in first grade at Burr. I think Fairfield should not cut money. My brother loves the ECC, and they help him every day learn to speak clearer. Before the ECC, he couldn't speak at all. He needed the extra teachers there to work with him and all of his friends. They all need our help. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vanessa DeSantis. I'm a mom, taxpayer, and I was a teacher for 12 years, and I'm an educational consultant. And these proposed cuts to our school systems are going to affect us all. And a lot of us will say, not me, you know, my kids already went through the system, not me, it's not going to affect us. But it is, because you will undoubtedly know some of these children I'm going to mention, whether they're your own children, your nieces, your nephews, your grandsons, or your granddaughters. So let's take the child with special needs. This child has the support of dedicated professionals, occupational and physical or speech therapists who work with him so he can achieve success in the classroom and in life. And they teach him in the way he learns, they individualize instruction to make him as successful as he can be. And he is, because this support system works. But that may be taken away, and where does that leave him? And then there's the gifted child. We all know this child as well. This is the child who's far beyond her peers in her grasp of concepts and in the way she thinks about and analyzes the world around her. Her brain fires in a different way, and her gifted program knows just how to meet her needs and push her in new directions of learning. But maybe that will disappear, and where will she be? There's a musician, put a violin in this child's hands, and he's home. He shines when reading and playing music, and without him knowing, this has helped to improve his language development, spatial intelligence, and even his test scores. But that program might disappear. We got the linguist. She loves the fact that there's a big, exciting world out there and wants to connect with that world by learning another language, like Spanish. And aside from speaking another language, she's learned the invaluable lesson that we may not look, speak, or act alike, but we are all simply people. A crucial lesson to learn, especially in today's times. But that might disappear, and where does that leave her? And finally, there's every child, every single one of them, crammed into classrooms that are too small for all their bodies due to larger class sizes, too small for all their seats and tables and backpacks and lunches and projects and dirty tissues, too small for all their different personalities, learning styles, strengths, and opportunities, and too much for their teacher who's forced to instruct more students than she can effectively handle, a teacher who's been essentially set up to fail, so she's expected to differentiate instruction in more than 30 different ways. Not my child, you say? It is your child, it is my child, and it's all of our children. And when our children's needs are not met today, they undoubtedly face troubles tomorrow. Why is it that when it comes down to dollars and cents, we squeeze it out of our kids? They are our future. We must invest in our future and not chip away at it. And finally, let's all do our part. Let's all do our part. Pay a little bit more in taxes instead of costing our children so much. Thank you.
My name is Caroline Trombley. I live on 49 Old Farm Road. I am a tax-paying resident, a parent of 2 children, a product of the Fairfield school system, and a teacher in this town. I strongly urge you to fully fund the Board of Education budget and maintain our exemplary school system. I graduated in 1998 from Fairfield High School, and I, as well as my brother and sister and 9 other cousins, took advantage of the opportunities the educational system offers here. We were well prepared for college, taking AP classes, sports, languages, music, and the arts that were offered. The well-rounded education I received here allows me to see the advantages of each opportunity given to me from kindergarten through high school. I became an elementary orchestra teacher in 2003 and have been a teacher in Fairfield for 13 years, giving back to the program. I currently teach 160 students who started an instrument in 4th grade and now have become proud and responsible members of an orchestra. Starting the kids in 4th grade is integral for the program on whole, which was seen many years ago when the 4th grade strings was taken away and given back the next year. The class that lost the year of music instruction never recovered or caught up to where they should have been. This year alone, 791 students, along with their tax-paying parents, choose to be part of the exceptional string program that is one of the programs on the list to be cut. In 2011, my husband and I chose to live in Fairfield along with many other young families who buy in town because of the opportunities it presented to our children. We could have chosen to live in another town with a much nicer house, but we knew we were spending the extra money for the educational opportunities such as gifted, athletics, arts, languages, and music. I know what Fairfield's education has given me. I see each day the leadership roles, teamwork, problem-solving skills, and pride that it gives my students. And I truly hope, as a homeowner, taxpayer, and parent of a kindergartner at Stratfield and a 3-year-old in the Ward High School preschool program, that you will make the right choices to fund the budget so that I can continue to see what this education system can do for my students and my own children in the future. Please do not cut programming from our schools.
My name is Rabab Hussain Sayed. I'm on Judd Street. My husband and I also moved to Fairfield because we love the school system. We have 2 boys. I have a 4th grader and I have a kindergartner. My kindergartner has special needs. He is a nonverbal autistic young boy, very charming, wonderful, and is absolutely thriving in the wonderful school system that we have here in Fairfield, which we only knew to be true due to the fact that there are so many resources for him to be able to take in and benefit from. I have to say, it may sound redundant, but people do move here for the schools. There are families. We do have children. Parents are taxpayers. Seniors are taxpayers. Yes, go to Hartford. Put up that shield. Do all of it. But don't think that we also won't hold our Board of Ed accountable, seniors, and make sure that they are, from the meeting the other night, are also implementing certain changes so that we're not seemingly overspending and we're cutting costs in all the right places, such as the assets, et cetera, and not our programs. So we will hold them accountable. It's not like we're freewheeling over here either. Secondly, as a mother with a child with special needs who may potentially never be an independent functioning person, I do have costs. I have insurmountable costs. I am saying here today, I am willing to pay 3 times in taxes so that seniors can be okay, we can be okay, the parents can be okay, and our schools can be okay. So if you need to do that, you do that. And this is coming from me, wherein my expenses will never, ever have a limit to what they'll be, because I may have a child who may never be independent functioning. So if I can stand here and say that, increase my taxes if you need to get us out of this mess, I hold everyone accountable then, even the seniors, even the parents, to do the same thing. Because we all need it. We all need money, certainly. You're in a difficult position, we understand, but you need to fight both wars for us. You need to go to Hartford and you need to clear us out of this mess, and we will do what you need us to do for you to be able to do that. But please, not at least the education system, do not cut money from there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol Guernsey, and I live at 241 Brookside Drive. And I'd like to read a short note from my son, Aiden Guernsey, who was a bit under the weather this morning and not able to be here, and he asked me to read this on his behalf. Aiden is 11 years old, and he's in 5th grade at Osborne Hill Elementary School. I always wanted to play violin and be in an orchestra. Mrs. Trombley is a really good orchestra teacher. It's a lot of fun being in her class. She has a great sense of humor and says funny things that make me laugh. When I started playing violin in 4th grade, I wasn't able to play one note, and by the end of the year, I was playing a 2-page long song called Storm by Soon He Newbald. I really like that song. It's exciting to hear all the instruments play together to make harmonies. When I play music, it makes me feel happy. I would be sad if the kids in the younger grades, including my brother Owen, did not have the same opportunity I did. Music is very important to me, and fourth grade orchestra really encouraged me to make music and practice every day. I want to play the violin through high school. So that was the message from Aiden. The strength of Fairfield Public Schools music programs is one of the many reasons that my family moved to this town. The fourth grade strings program not only improved my son's aptitude for music, but also helped to build his confidence. Because of his introduction to strings in fourth grade, he was able to take part in an all-town fifth grade orchestra program that has allowed him to meet like-minded peers that will support his transition to middle school. We all know that playing music is good for your brain. Musical training helps increase coordination and a sense of achievement. It helps keep kids engaged in school. Children can develop math and pattern recognition skills with the help of musical education, and it develops creative thinking, builds imagination, and intellectual curiosity. It teaches discipline and prepares our children for the creative economy. There are many other proven ways that music contributes to the well-being of our children and enriches their lives. Maintaining programs such as the fourth grade orchestra and elementary school world language is critical to providing a strong and appropriate education for our children. For this reason, I hope that you will approve the education budget without restrictions and reductions. Thank you.
Hi, I am Emily Joyce. I'm a fourth grader that goes to Osborne Hill School. I love my school. My teachers are and wonderful programs. Please invest in education. We, the children, are the future of Fairfield. Invest in us. Thank you.
I'm Peter Stovall. I've lived in this town since '75. I was born in 1942, which is really scary because my children wonder and are amazed I can still stand up and move. But I diverge and digress. The thing that I've watched over my 75 years is a lot of change. I've seen the Pan Am building lose its name and Pan American go out of business. I've seen American Airlines taken over by an upstart airline more recently. I've seen consolidation. I've seen Macy's, a great store, ready to die. To pull up on something an earlier person said, from New York City, well, prices go up every year, and we accept that. That's wonderful. Well, actually, businesses can't do that. If they do that, they eventually go out of business because business, the private sector, has to change and adapt in order to survive. If you look at people's buying habits, they don't go to that same store when prices go up 20%. They go online. And I think the wonderful thing in all the years that I've been living is businesses come and go, governments don't change. And that's the difficult thing that we're faced with now. Your cost structure keeps going up. You've got to change structurally how you do things. You've got to innovate. It doesn't mean you can't spend money. You've got to change how you spend it. And but just like people have buying opportunities and they maximize those, people also have opportunities where they live and where they pay their taxes. And that means that the town of Fairfield has to get control of their budget and say, we are not going to beat inflation. It's said that only the older people are being harmed by this. Actually, in my own personal experience, we older people are much better able to cope with this than younger people. We don't have kids to bring up. We're on our own. Young people have budgets. They shouldn't have to impose bigger and bigger taxes. Every dollar in taxes is a dollar you can't spend on something you might make a better decision on than your government does. I would plead with you to stay at the rate of inflation with your budget increases and be imaginative in changing your structure. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Sherwood. My son is a second grader at Riverfield Elementary School, and my daughter is an incoming kindergartner. I'm here today to request that the Board of Finance ensure the Board of Education's proposed budget is fully funded. In addition to being a mother, I am also an elementary school teacher and aspiring administrator. Over the past 12 years, I've personally experienced the increased demands public school teachers are facing as curriculum has become more rigorous and the public has become largely focused on student assessment and teacher accountability. The educators with whom I work, one of whom is also here today, are some of the most dedicated, selfless people I've known, giving whatever it takes to do what's best for kids. These educators give of their time, money, and energy so that their students can have the tools they need to be successful. No matter what measures of accountability are imposed upon them, they are no match for the level of accountability these educators hold themselves to each and every day. However, year after year, educators have faced cuts to education budgets, further reducing the tools and supports available for them as they engage in one of the noblest professions. This puts undue pressure on these educators to do more with less, which takes a toll. Educators are facing unprecedented levels of stress. According to a recent study through the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, 46% of teachers reported experiencing high levels of stress daily, which is correlated with health issues, lack of sleep, quality of life issues, and teaching performance. High levels of teacher stress are correlated with lower levels of students' social adjustment and academic achievement. Students' academic achievement levels are often cited as lackluster when compared with their global peers. For example, according to the most recent PISA data reported by the Pew Research Center, U.S. students ranked 38th out of 71 countries in math and 24th in both reading and science. Furthermore, the most recent NAEP data, a U.S. Education Department project, indicates that only 40% of fourth graders, 33% of eighth graders, and 25% of 12th graders scored at the proficient or advanced levels in math. This data indicates that at each of these three grade levels, the majority of students not only failed to achieve proficiency in mathematics, but rather the percentage of students performing below grade level increased as students progressed through middle and high school. Our teachers need the resources available to them to meet the needs of every student in their classroom. Our public schools need a fully funded budget and the explicit support of all community members to successfully prepare our children for a lifetime of success. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Libby Kennedy, and I'm a speech pathologist here at Ludlow. I would love to see this budget pass and see more money go into special education. I think that the kids that we have are absolutely amazing, and Ludlow right now has a 97% graduation rate. And aside from just the 97% graduation rate, these are good kids, and they're compassionate kids, and they're caring kids, and they're well-rounded kids. So it's not just from going from their math class to their global class, it's all in between. And when I moved from New York City a couple of years ago, this was the dream, to live and work in Fairfield, a place where I could make a difference and be safe. And this town is so safe because of your teachers, your social workers, your guidance counselors, your school psychologists, who are all making sure that your students and your children know how to be a functioning member of society. And if these things get cut, it's not going to be the same, and this won't be the same wonderful Fairfield that we now know. Looking at possibly a high school getting cut and combining them what makes these children so well-rounded and so successful and thriving is the house system we have. And that way that their deans and their principal and their counselors get to know them and really make it individualized. That's not lavish, that's appropriate. And it's really frustrating to think that this would be taken away. You know, as people have said, this is our future. And as someone that works in special education, I refuse to sit across from a parent and tell them that I will reduce services or can't give their children what they need because of the budget. I won't.
Hi, my name is Tara Shea. My husband and I made the decision, like many couples, to buy a home in Fairfield in 2005 when the market was high. We were willing to pay that higher cost for our small home because of the school system. You see, Fairfield was where I wanted to raise a family. I was also going back to school for my master's degree in education, and I knew in my heart that I would one day work in this town. Today I'm here advocating for both my children and my students. I am a parent with children at Fairfield Woods and North Stratfield Elementary School. I am a 5th grade teacher at another elementary school in town. First, I would like to thank you for your time and the services that you are providing our town. I know that this is a particularly difficult budget situation for us all. Second, I'm respectfully asking that the state allow us to postpone our budget vote until after the state has approved their budget. To do so, if the budget vote cannot be delayed, I am requesting that the Board of Ed budget remain as is, with no future cuts. I would even go so far as to ask that the $2 million cut to the Board of Ed be restored. I believe that Dr. Jones has presented the town with a lean budget, and after hearing the proposed Tier 1 and Tier 2 cuts outlined at Thursday's Board of Ed meeting, I am worried about the impact on our children's education and well-being. What is especially troublesome is that these cuts to programs, such as the elimination of world language and 4th grade orchestra, as well as reductions in positions, curriculum development, and maintenance projects, are not enough. Cuts to the programming will have a direct impact on the students. I'd like to share an example with you. Eliminating world language in 3rd through 5th grades is a huge loss when we have worked so hard to restore the program over the past years. Once something is taken away, it is not easy to get back. Likewise, each programming cut will affect our kids. Pay to play sports or pay for music will take away opportunity from students who may need it the most. Taking away the aquatics program will hurt our students with special needs. Any cuts will affect our children. One thing that I've been hearing overall is people advocating for not losing these programs. What is even more scarier than that is the Tier 3 recommendations. If those cuts are made, it would be devastating to our school system. It's important to consider how structural changes in this Tier 3, such as closing an elementary or high school, will influence our children's education. My main concerns are the impact of class sizes on instruction when filling classrooms to maximum capacity, the emotional difficulty on students being asked to move to a new school, and the additional cost of busing due to loss of neighborhood schools. There's a huge difference in education between a class at maximum capacity and having a few empty seats in the classroom.
You're well over 3 minutes.
Okay. Can I say one more sentence? Thank you. The one thing that has really been getting me is the way that this argument over money has pit groups against each other when I really believe that we need to be working together for the common good of our community, which includes, at most, our children, our future, so to speak, and the future that is dependent upon their education. That was one sentence.
Hi. My name is Veronica Chen Guerrero, and this is my daughter Annabelle, and we're on 65 Blaine Street. So we want to thank you for your service, and we've been here for 10 years. My husband and I moved here. We choose to live in this town when I was pregnant with Annabelle, and really the only reason that we want to be here is, again, for the great school system. And moving here, we also contribute to the town.
was economic growth, because we, not only we bought a house, we pay our taxes, we enjoy all the towns, what town has to offer, restaurants, beaches. Also, we moved my parents in, so they bought a house here. And my sister, she had made some investment here. And we also, for the 10 years that we have experienced great school systems here, my daughter's at a Riverfield school. And I know somebody had mentioned before there were constructions or necessary. You know, my daughter, for the first 4 years at Riverfield, they were in a temporary housing. So the summertime is really hot and wintertime is really cold, right? So last year, they finally got the construction done, and the kids are just so excited. I mean, it was really a nice event. So I don't think that's lavish. That was necessary for them, okay? So anyway, so we realized that we have a great challenge with the tax strain, so we know we all had to deal with that. But we wanted to ask you here today to really to look, alternatives. Maybe, if we have to cut, let's cut somewhere else, but do not cut our children, right? I am not originally from here, I'm from China. So in China, we have a saying is that no matter how when life gets hard, don't cut your kids, right? Don't cut anything involved with your children. Because your children are our future, right? And everybody here, even if you don't have your children, you're a parent, you're a grandparent, you're an aunt, you're an uncle. So please do not cut into our future. And Annabelle has something to say.
I'm in the Gifted and Talented program, and it has really affected the way I think, and I do not want that taken away. And also, I'm in the music and orchestra program, and that is just amazing, and you really should not cut that.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Chick-Hopkins. I'm a homeowner in town. I am the proud mother of a senior at Fairfield Ward High School, and I'm an educator in town. The values of our country were formed during the Enlightenment period, which believed that government should serve the people. And I believe that it is the duty of government, town government, to protect our most precious resources, which is our children. And I believe our children in this town deserve a quality education. And it is also a very important way to keep our finances well. As you hear, many people move into town for the quality of the education, and that keeps our property values up, which is really a long-term benefit to everyone who lives and owns property in town. I understand that at this time it is very difficult to know what our budget is, because the state budget numbers at this point are really quantum numbers, meaning until they are actually observed, we have no idea what cuts are going to be made. We know that in surrounding towns, no one is considering that $9 million cut to pensions is actually going to be passed down to the towns when you talk to state representatives from around the state. We don't know where the numbers are, and until we observe them, we really don't know what is going to be cut. And I believe that we should pass Dr. Jones' budget as she presented it to us. And I believe that if cuts come down from the state, if we all are not effectively lobbying up at the state to make sure that we have help from the state to fund our education, that Dr. Jones and the Board of Education can at that time adjust the budget as they did this year when a cut came down in the middle of the school year. Thank you very much.
Morning. Good morning. My name is Ariane McMahon. I live at 272 Fairfield Beach Road, right across from the brand new shiny pavilion. I moved to this town with my family back in 2003. We came from Massachusetts. There's a pattern here. You're hearing from a lot of parents, a lot of people who moved here. Due diligence, I have a child with special needs. She's currently a junior here at Ludlow. I researched Connecticut on where we needed to live so that she was going to get the level of education that I thought she deserved. I also had an 18-month-old son at the time, and I now currently have a third child who is at Sherman, and my son is also here at Ward. In 2008, we needed to move, and we had the choice then to stay in town or to leave. We decided to stay because my kids are getting a great education. Fairfield afforded us the opportunity for my daughter, who has significant special needs, to be integrated into the school system. Not all school systems do that. Fairfield does. A lot of school systems segregate their special needs kids out. Fairfield Department of Ed invites our special children into the classroom with their typical peers. My daughter has gained invaluable friendships because she's had the opportunity to do that. And it's because of the quality of the education in this town. Now, when we were given the opportunity to move, we bought an expensive house down by the beach. And taxes come with that, but that's okay with us because of the education that my kids are receiving, in particular, what the special ed department is able to provide my daughter, who is thriving and doing well. And I'm not gonna, earlier you asked us to tell us if we hear things or if we see things. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it at all. This is what I'm hearing in the parent meetings that I go to, in the education meetings that I go to. Families are talking about leaving. It's a discussion because they're afraid of what their kids are gonna lose if these cuts get made. They're talking about other school systems that could potentially be better. And that's a scary thought. So as for many years that Fairfield has been drawing in families from all over this country, I'm not gonna lie, because of the quality of our education system, now there is buzz, underlying buzz about families leaving because the education system is at risk.
Hey there, good morning. My name is Lori Frazone, 368 Round Hill Road. And thank you for you guys listening to all of our comments. And, also thank you to everybody in the audience because I'm so inspired by the active community we live in. I think it's so important, no matter what your perspective is, to voice your opinion and make sure you participate in this public process. Because if you don't, you can't complain, right? So, so thank you to everybody who's been brave enough to stand up in front of a crowd. I too moved to Fairfield. I'm a voter, a taxpayer, and the proud mother of my son who goes to Osborne Hill School. He's sitting over there with one of my friends. When I moved from Bridgeport to Fairfield, it was 100% only because of the schools. I can enjoy your beaches from another town. I can come to your restaurants from another town, but I want to live here to go to this school and to be in this school system. And, I won't elaborate. I think, I'm looking for you to fully fund that Board of Education budget, but I would like to also read this quote because I think it's powerful and it kind of bridges this gap and speaks to what we all believe. Public education does not exist for the benefit of the students or the benefit of their parents. It exists for the benefit of the social order. We've discovered as a species that it is useful to have an educated population. You do not need to be a student or have a child who is a student to benefit from public education. Every second of your life, you benefit from public education. So let me explain, the speaker is John Green, he's an author, why he likes to pay taxes for schools, even though he doesn't personally have a kid in school. It's because I don't like living in a country with a bunch of stupid people. So let's make our kids the smartest in Connecticut. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Hi, my name is Matthew Halleck. I live on Somerville Street in Fairfield. And I'd like to also express my thanks, like the predecessor just said, to all of you up here. I know you spend a lot of hours doing this on our behalf, and it can be a thankless task, and you can be the brunt of a lot of criticism and stuff. But I really, really appreciate everything you're doing on our behalf. Look, I'm a huge fan of education. Study after study, as everybody knows, the benefits and the ROI of, for personal property taxes, for personal income, everything, investments in education provide tremendous return on investment. And my wife is a school psychologist. My company has a huge educational component. I've taught on the college level for over 20 years. But my main issue actually is with the universities. And it's something that I think the town and the state can agree on, and that's really with, Fairfield has two huge universities, Fairfield U and Sacred Heart. And as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, they pay the pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes, which is about 30% on the dollar of private sector. And let's be honest, they're rolling in it, right? I mean, the enrollment is up, Fairfield Sacred Heart just bought cash, the whole GE compound, they're building like crazy. Can we be more aggressive and looking at, some real hardcore audits of what they're paying with the state
You know, they're very effective at pouring money into faculty or into building or into endowments, but saying, listen, this is a new time, this is a new age, this is tremendous impact on our resources and infrastructure in town, and instead of paying this, you know, on the pilot program, really having them pay more of their fair share.
I want to address that in a couple different ways. Thank you for your comments, because we get a lot of questions, comments, concerns over these programs. There's two things. Number one, the pilot program, to be clear, the universities don't pay into that. That is a state-funded program, and you're right, the title of it is Payment in Lieu of Taxes, and it's essentially saying all not-for-profits, just not the universities who have property, are excused from paying local taxes. And the state gives us a percentage of that tax revenue through this program called Pilot. Interesting to note, that program has also been cut. Right. In addition, there was some talk that the GE tax implications were not going to be felt for another year. There's an issue now as to whether at least half of that will impact us, which is several $100,000 in the current fiscal year. So I understand the sentiments. If we were to try to do something, it would probably apply to all not-for-profits, not just universities. And we have a problem there as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nate Schiavo. I live at 457 Wilson Street here in Fairfield. I'm a new resident. I just moved here about a year ago. I teach in New York City. I'm a veteran of union leadership in New York City. I've been to a lot of crazy meetings, and I tell you guys do it much better. Listen, yeah, you guys kill it. I mean, thank you for your work. And thanks everybody for coming with really good ideas and not shouting and yelling and screaming at each other. So I'll get to my point. You know, I've taught in the city system as a special ed teacher, and then also now as a social studies teacher and as union leader in particular over the last 10 years. I've been teaching for almost 18. And I got to tell you, the reason why we moved here is to not repeat everything that everybody just said, right? So I came here, brought my family here. I gotta say, the line between what is here and what is elsewhere is thin. It is paper thin. As a teacher, if you're a teacher in this room, let me hear you. You know how thin the line is between... You know how thin the line is between educating children, special needs children, general ed kids, providing them with extra things that they deserve and need, and I should say extra is probably the wrong word, but with the services that they need. And this line is so thin that we cannot afford a $2 million budget loss. You cannot. I mean, you cannot. I do my own school budget with my principal, and we work off $7.8 million. That's for 742 kids. When we lose $200,000 in a year for our school, that's 3 paras. I don't know if anyone knows New York City, but that means special ed kids now don't get brought the services that they need. And the razor-thin amount of money that I'm talking about, I think is insane. And I woke up this morning and I thought to myself, I'll share one thing, and here it is. Oh God, this stupid password. Why is there a password on these phones? All right, so this is what I saw, and this just... You don't teach technology. Absolutely not. If I could, I'd use a chalkboard. Okay, but a $220 million tax break gift to Lockheed Martin. And I don't know how old that is. Maybe that's 2 years old or whatever it is. But it came up on my phone when I typed in corporate welfare Connecticut. And this is a swindle. Your pensions, it's a swindle. The whole thing is a swindle. The money is going to somebody else and not the people that need it, deserve it, and make it.
Kelly McWhinney, 947 Churchill Road, and I really am not looking forward to following some of the previous speakers. Thank you so much for everything you've done. I've stood before you before and thanked you, and I will thank you again. No matter what side of the political aisle you're on, I appreciate your expertise and your time, and I don't envy the fact that you have to make these hard decisions for us. I would like to say that I take exception to this manufactured conflict between seniors and students. I'm trying to be quick and get my thoughts together, but essentially, we do recognize the value that seniors have in this town. And if we need to look at a more robust senior tax relief fund, I am all for that. But I feel that groups like Fairfield Taxpayer use seniors as cover for their desired goal of just keeping taxes down for themselves, regardless of what the impact is on the rest of town. And I am a solidly middle-class citizen and taxpayer in Fairfield and a parent. And I live in a house that I can afford, and I can afford to have my taxes go up a bit if it protects the value of my home, which I bought before the housing crash, so it's not even worth what it was when we paid for it. And if it protects everyone's investment in this town, because our school system does matter. If we are talking about cutting things like world languages and orchestra and music programs, that does matter to people who are shopping for a home. It does. I'd also like to say that in talking about we need to run the schools like a business, children are not widgets. Every single student in this town comes to school with a very complicated set of variables that cannot just be looked at with a bottom line. And the real experts in this field are the educators, and if you have a background in business, that tells you nothing about what it takes to educate a child. When we hear the statistics about only 30% of households in town have children, I would like to say how many of those 70% who don't have children in schools had at one point or will in the future? We have made a societal pact, as has been said before, that educating our populace matters and that it applies to everyone, whether you have children or not. Lastly, I would just like to give a shout out to the teachers. The teachers in this state have been paying into their pension fund for years, knowing that the state was not funding it. They're also paying into Social Security, which they're never going to get. So we're talking about cutting the budgets for them to do their jobs, and they're looking at paying into a fund that they're never going to see. So I just feel terrible that they are in this position. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Virginia Sanford, Hillside. I first of all want to thank you, all of you, for coming and spending the time. Fairfield and Southport used to be a lovely, affordable place to live. Now, my children and grandchildren can't even afford to live here. It is being destroyed. We are being taxed out of existence, not only in Fairfield, but in Hartford, and something should be done about it. Look at the number of houses for sale. People are moving out of here into other states where there is no income tax and property taxes are lower. Will you please cut your spending and reduce our taxes? This means cutting across the board. I'm not talking about, if you don't have any money in Fairfield, what good are the schools if people can't afford to live here? Will you please tell me why a special election has to be a special election which will cost the lawyers money, will cost taxpayers money, when in the charter it says that the selectmen after a certain number of days can be. But I don't understand why this is going on. But this is a waste of money. Do we need to spend... That's one thing. The other thing is affordable housing. The one on Bronson Road, I know this is state, is not in the right place, and this is another waste of money and that we have to pay for. Whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, we all want the best for everybody, and we should work together. Cut spending in every department, including education, not necessarily it is the administration. If you cannot afford it, you should not spend it. We moved here not because of the schools, but because it is a desirable, lovely community, also near New York City.
I guess she doesn't want me to speak. Hello, Frank Sahagan, 20 Chelsea Street in Fairfield. I have the distinctive, first I'd like to thank you guys again. You do a fabulous job. It's a thankless job, and you really are an incredible board. I've always been impressed about the dialogue and the level of decorum that you guys always demonstrate. It's terrific. I'd like to start by saying I'm both a teacher in town, and have taught here for 7 years, as well as a resident for over 30 years, and a senior as well. So I wear both hats. And with all due respect to the gentleman who said before about how the generous pensions for the teachers here need to be looked at, as a senior, I perhaps will not be able to afford to stay in this town as well. So I get it at both sides. I can definitely understand both sides of the equation. They're not quite that generous if you can't afford to stay here after putting in service as a teacher. I would also say that I think it's time, and I agree structurally what we have to look at here in terms of what this budget is addressing to us, and it is time to stand up to Hartford. This $9 million of unfunded teachers' benefits. Other towns, I understand, maybe I'm incorrect, but I understand Westport and Greenwich have chosen not to put this in because, as you spoke, and we were addressed by our state senators and assemblymen that said that, they don't think it's going to pass. Well, perhaps it's time. That's our way to stand up to Hartford and to say, no, we're not going to put that $9 million in our budget. Now, I don't know where that decision lies, whether it lies with this board or with the Board of Selectmen or both in some kind of combination, I don't know. But I think that's something strongly to consider because we're talking about structural changes that do need to be made, and I totally agree with that. And frankly, I have addressed our own Board of Education in terms of some of the structural changes that need to be made in terms of enrollment going down, building allocation. I know these are difficult things, redistricting, these racial imbalance. Now, racial imbalance can easily be solved with redistricting, and you have a school in McKinley that, frankly, the people love going to the school, and we're spending much money talking about trying to address 2% because we're trying to abide by the state's regulations. It's time to stand up to the state and say, forget it. You know what? McKinley is fine. Why waste that money? Stand up to them. And we have to look at the enrollment. So it's structural changes. We cannot be backed into a corner in making structural changes rashly and quickly. Structural changes take time. They take study. So when you're going to look at allocation of buildings and declining enrollments, those things take time. And let us not be forced into making those kinds of changes in this upcoming budget year, which you will be forced to do if you take $4 million out of the education budget. You will be forced to do that because the Tier 1 and Tier 2 changes are program-related, and as you heard, how painful it would be for those programs to be cut, what that would look like. Well, then you get to the $4 million, you have to get into structural changes. That is the reality. You would have to get into looking at closing schools. You would have to, that's all that's left. That's the reality. So you don't have a choice with the $9 million, really. I don't think we do. It's time to stand up to Hartford, say, we're not going to budget it. That's our way of saying that we don't believe it. And then we cannot destroy the school. It's easy to tear the school district down, the system down. It's very easy to do it. It's very hard to rebuild it once you do it.
Good morning. My name is Kirsten Sobrowski. I am a taxpayer. I'm a parent of 3 children in the public schools. One of my sons is here reading in the back because his amazing teachers taught him how to. And because sometimes I'm unavailable to do so because I
am taking care of other people's children. I am a social worker in the district, and I understand that this is one of the departments being considered for cutting. People don't understand why there is a need for social workers in this district, and there's a misconception that I'm here to take away your children, but that is not the case. I am part of only one of 2 people in the elementary school buildings that are on the clinical team, if you will. And when I cannot express to you enough the growing needs of our children and families in the mental health area that require our time more and more, and I find myself less and less available. I am part of the special education team that provides specialized instruction to students that require this to maintain their academic, their social, and behavioral supports to stay in their present school. I am also part of the team that comes out to your car and helps you get your anxious child into school. I am also the one that your child goes to when they're upset about a friend who's hurt their feelings. I am the one that they go to when their parents are getting divorced or someone has died. These are things that may not be important to some, but they are important to me and to many other people. I not just am a social worker, it's who I am as a person. I ask that you consider accepting the budget as is. I appreciate all you do. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Samantha Highwile. I've been a resident in Fairfield for 20 years, and I also can wear many of the hats, having certainly the school system was part of why I decided to move here. My son, 4th through, he graduated from Fairfield Ward. I'm a senior. And one of the things that's really hitting me, it's my first time at a meeting like this, is there seems to be this either or, and I don't get it. I've had to budget my whole life. I never made a lot of money, and I always had to make choices. Now, I must say that one of the things I've always said is that I never, because I was careful and always had priorities, I never sort of wasn't able to do something that I really wanted to do. I take my son to Costa Rica to study Spanish for 3 months, things like that. And so, the school system is very important, and I'm hearing about cuts, but I also, as a senior, and just, 4.5%, the taxes, I do think we're going to chase people away that way. So if somebody before said that, I think we need a lot of sort of creativity. I'd like to look at the budget. I really haven't, because I just think that there's got to be, okay. Maybe I could look, maybe I could have some suggestions, because I just think this either or. I just think that there's got to be room and places to, to cut, school programs. I'm not all for that. I did grow up in a time when 30, 32 in classroom, and I did pretty well. Just had a 50th high school reunion, we all did pretty well. So, I just think that a little wider way of thinking, a little more creativity, we can in a sense have it all if we let certain things, tighten up certain things where we can. So I'll look at the budget.
Hi, I'm Doug Ray. I live on Warwick Avenue, and this is going to be redundant, but at least I'll try to be brief. I'll be redundant but brief. I'm just another one of those people who works in New York and lives in Fairfield, and my wife and I moved 16 or 17 years ago from Stamford because of the school system. And we've lived in 2 different places in Fairfield, 2 different neighborhoods, and in both places, every time there's been a turnover in our neighborhood, it's been a young professional family with kids moving in because of the school system. And I feel that it's almost Fairfield's brand. It's our claim to fame. And I just feel that supporting the education budget and supporting the schools is really a smart long-term investment. It's not, there's nothing silly about it. And, I'll be qualified for AARP this year for 10 years, so I guess I'm sort of a senior. And I've lived in a lot of different places around the country, and I've really never seen anything like that, where people come here for the school system. So please support it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amy Dutter, and I live at 70 Cider Mill Lane here in Fairfield. And my husband and I, like so many, and I want to go for brevity as well, but echo the really important points that have made before by so many parents and educators. First and foremost, I, like so many in this room, and beyond description, how grateful and indelibly pleased I am with the educators and the music educators and the coaches and the Fairfield school system. I can't even really describe it. My husband and I moved here right after we got married 25 years ago, and we weren't even thinking of kids at all, but we were thinking down the road of children in school systems. And we had grown up in Lower Fairfield County, so we too had benefited from really fantastic public education. And again, from the moment we went to Mill Hill, I recognized Mrs. Garavell, and my own son benefited from Kirsten Zabrowski's social work program at Mill Hill enormously. Two of them started in 4th grade strings, and though they ultimately switched over to the choral program, it was invaluable. One of my sons right now wants to major in math and music in college, and that's because he loves the academics he got in Fairfield as well as the music program. And like so many others, I don't understand the either or between seniors and families and educators. I really want to emphasize, I remember moving to Overhill Road, and on our street was I have to be quick, Chief David Russell, who's retired, he's passed away, fire chief in Fairfield. He told me, not only is this a great town, but I raised all my kids in these schools. They all went through and chose to stay. That was our whole neighborhood. You know, we have things like Candlelight and Carillon that bring seniors and music performers and families together. I just would really encourage you, like so many others, to adopt Dr. Jones' budget. I'm also the president of one of them, of the Fairfield MPA, and in support of music. Thank you.
Good morning, friends. My name is John Santa. I live at 33 Chester Place in Southport. What I do professionally is I am an independent director for private companies, so therefore I sit on boards just like you guys do. The only difference is with private companies, mainly family companies, we end up in discussions a lot like these, where we're all kind of stuck together and we can't get away from one another, and sometimes we disagree. Sometimes there's guns and butter discussions, and sometimes they get heated. A maxim in my world is, when it gets emotional, go empirical. We have heard some beautifully heartfelt, wonderful sentiments by parents, teachers, and students of our wonderful education system here, all about the wonderful parts of our education system, and I think it's just great. And I take no issue with that. Irene and I are invested in it. Our 2 grandgirls are in school here in the state, in the town. However, I haven't heard any one of them ever stand up here and start talking to this issue, this sheet that's put out here by the Fairfield taxpayers. This is reality. This is empirical. This is numbers. What we are spending for education is radically different from what we're spending for a lot of other things in our town. I think we have to face that reality and deal with it. And I think this discussion will be immeasurably enhanced when those passionate people, parents, teachers, students, come to the table and talk in terms of empirical numbers and talk about how we're going to deal with this really. And oh, by the way, if you think we got a mess here, you ain't seen nothing until you went to Hartford. Your state teachers' pensions, which are totally underfunded, our state budget, which is out of control, way out of control, it's a disaster coming. It's coming, and we won't be sitting here talking about whether we can have music or fencing. We'll be talking about whether we can afford to heat the buildings and open the doors. It ain't far away. Believe me, it isn't. And our fiddling while this Rome is burning is not good. So let's get empirical. Let's get number-wise. Let's get number-oriented. Let's answer these questions, see what we're going to do. Thank you very much.
My name is Karen Fleming. I live at 3 Rushbrook Lane. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Osborne Hill Elementary School. I've been a teacher since 1976. My strong belief is there's no free lunch. You have to pay for what you get. And if you want to produce a well-educated and successful future generation, you have to make that a priority and pay for it. I strongly urge you to make children top priority and support the school budget.
Robert Stilson, 103 Orchard Hill Drive. I agree with the gentleman that was here before. I think we should take a stand against the $9.2 million pension fund funding the state. In fact, I understand that we have a $28 million rainy day fund and that we're continuing to contribute. This I got from the Fairfield Taxpayer Association, and I assume it to be true. Since there's questions whether we're even going to get charged with this, based upon conversations here and with our state representatives, if we do have to pay for that or it is forced down our throats, I suggest that we use the rainy day fund to pay for it at that time and not now. If it looks like in the future, then it gives us more time to plan our budgets rather than doing it in 2 months. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for participating in this and hanging in there. My name is Jeff Rubin. I live on Sasko Hill Road. One of the things that occurred to me as I was listening to people's comments is I wonder if anyone's looking at the perspective that we're now trying to evaluate how to limit the education of children in the town to pay for expenses that were incurred 20, 30, 40 years ago by failure to subsidize or to support the pension plan of teachers by the state. So the state, in all its majesty, has now said, we screwed up, or we used the money for other things. Now the towns are going to have to pay for something that we refused to do. So we're all arguing about a question whether we can educate our children today or whether we pay for costs that should have been incurred long ago and paid for by other people. My suggestion, as was mentioned earlier in this, and I think Mr. Santa just basically said something along the same lines, is it's time for the town to stand up and say, we're not going to do it. And I'm aware of meetings in Darien and other towns similar to this where everybody is aghast by the notion that we have to make up the deficit that the state arbitrarily created. And someone who indicated that it was Lockheed who actually got the $250 million in Trumbull probably saved 4,000 jobs. I think you can't argue against what the implications might have been. But that money was about 50% of the deficit of the Teachers Fund of the state of Connecticut. So how these decisions get made and why we have no impact on making those decisions is a little hard to understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming to listen to us. My name is Julie Cinnamon. I live on 8 Dawn Street. I am soon to be a senior citizen in 2 days. I am the lowest paid employee of the Board of Education, and I moved here 37 years ago because I was pregnant with my second child and I wanted them to go to good schools. In that 37 years, I have seen a lot of changes, and in the past several years, a lot of budget cuts. I think we are at bare bones. I don't get a raise. I give up days. I do what I can to support the children of this town. It is important that you save the budget where it's at now for our children. These are my children. Mine are all grown up, live other places, but the children I take care of and I support in the schools need this budget, especially the special ed kids. That's all I have to say.
Hi, good morning. My name is Art Levy. I'm a relative newcomer to Fairfield. Some perspective. My wife and I moved into Connecticut to raise our family in 1984 at a time when there was no state income tax. We moved into Westport. We lived there for about 25, 30 years. And as I'm getting closer to retirement age, my wife and I decided, since we were empty nesters, move out of Westport and come to delightful Fairfield, where we bought a lovely townhome. which was the right pricing and the right tax structure for us. Ironically, many of our friends in Westport are telling us that they have seen a tax decrease. Westport continues to have a much lower mill rate. Fairfield's mill rate is much higher than Westport's. Westport is delivering outstanding services. So one thing I would suggest is you may have colleagues in Westport, ask them what they're doing differently and what's going on. Secondly, I must say that I'm a senior, I guess next month. I'm still a commuter. I have grandchildren in this town. So while I'm a very strong supporter of the Fairfield public school system, I think our kids in Fairfield deserve a first-rate education. But that's not to say that we shouldn't look at what's in the budget. I don't know what's under the hood. Are there too many administrators? I can't say. But I'd be very hesitant to cut classroom. I'd be very hesitant to cut teachers. I'd be very hesitant to cut any of the programs. But perhaps you can look a little differently at what's being spent where. But again, the Fairfield schools are a jewel in town, and I think they need to be preserved. The second thing I think I'd like you to focus on is you're being given a false choice. You're being given false choices. It seems to me there is absolutely no reason why you need to react to what the crazy folks in Hartford are going to be doing. Do not panic. Do not raise our taxes based upon some crazy notion that we have to fund the unfunded pensions for our teachers or any of our municipal services. That is where I want you to retain the best law firms and sue the state of Connecticut. I want you to go after the state of Connecticut and basically say, no, we're not doing this. And if it comes down to it, the other thing I think this committee needs to think about is, look, I've worked in the private sector for many years. I'm still a commuter into New York City, and the world has changed. The old-fashioned defined benefit plans are gone in corporate America. They are basically gone. It seems to me, if it ever comes to be our responsibility, you have got to look at a 401k plan where there's a set amount that's contributed each year by the participant and by the school, but the risk of funding is placed upon, in effect, the employees. And it's just not teachers. It's all municipal workers need to assume that burden and to be consistent. So please consider that. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Alexis McIlvain, Woodside Circle. I am a taxpayer. I am a voter. I am on the executive board of the PTA at Stratfield School. I have a first grader at Stratfield, and I have a 3-year-old at ECC who has special needs. You recently heard that we should speak in data. Here is some data. When my son started at ECC last June, he had fewer than 20 words. He is now speaking in 3 to 4 word sentences, and that is due to the extreme hard work of his special education teachers, his paraprofessionals, his speech and language pathologists, his BCBA, and his occupational therapists. You've also recently heard that families are talking about leaving. That is a reality for me and my family. When we bought in Fairfield, we had the intention of staying here for decades. If my son's special education services are cut, we will need to make that hard choice of looking elsewhere. I urge you to not cut. Please support the BOE budget as written. Thank you.
Hi, Debbie Darren, 2451 Mill Plain Road. I too am a taxpayer, a parent, and an employee of the school system. I am a social worker here at Fairfield Ludlow High School. And I don't have empirical data in numbers, but from experience of watching our special education numbers rise, we in the counseling center, there are 2 psychologists, 2 social workers, another part-time psychologist, and a student assistance council at each high school. I hear that that's extensive. We see over 25% of the students in our school. That is not just our special education students. We see our AP students who are struggling with anxiety and stress from the pressure that they are under. I will state that if I had to go to college today with the performance that I had in high school, I don't think I would make it. They are required to have resumes pages long. We support them. As Ms. Zabrowski said earlier, we are the ones doing home visits to help get our students to the school. We are the ones providing these social skills for our autistic and Asperger's children. We have 2 new programs that are addressing the mental health and the complex learners in our schools. We have not increased our staffing significantly to cover the needs of the services that these students need. We don't want to let the general education students not have a place to come either. You know, so many times we have notes left for us, came to look for you, having a bad day, please come find us. We don't know when we're successful because we don't have the negative. We only know when we're not successful when something happens to a student. Knock wood, we've been doing pretty well here in Fairfield. Our students are struggling academically. They are struggling with mental health issues that have increased. I don't know why. We can look at studies, but the anxiety level of our students is at a high. One of my neighbors teaches in New Canaan. She has 30% of her kids on a 504 or special ed for anxiety. We are needed. The budget that has been put towards you is at its bare bones. You know, in our contract, we are supposed to have a prep and a lunch, and I can speak for everyone in my office. I don't know what that is. I eat lunch with my students. I know the teachers all stay after school. And just to wrap it up, I also know that Dr. Jones, who is our new superintendent, has met with so many different groups in the education system, and I believe we are looking at doing creative things, at looking how to use our money differently and more cost efficiently. But I don't think that we can take any less to do what we are doing now, so thank you.
Good morning. My name is Amanda Rowland, 104 Alma Drive. I am a resident of Fairfield and a teacher at Fairfield Ward. And first of all, I'd just like to say I love teaching your kids. So parents, elementary school and middle school teachers, thank you. Your kids are fantastic. One thing that I'd like to say is my husband and I moved to Fairfield specifically from Pennsylvania. We believe that it was the best investment for our future, both financially and personally. And coming from Pennsylvania, we witnessed a lot of what Connecticut's going through now with really tough times and a very difficult budget at the state level. And what we watched were districts that continued to react to what was going on in Harrisburg without taking into consideration long-term validation for what's going on in their school systems. So over the past 10 years, the districts have continued to cut and cut and cut education, because I would argue that's the easy decision. We talk about making hard decisions, but actually this is an easy one. We cannot take away from our education budget and the goal of trying to solve short-term solutions. Long-term, for the fiscal viability of the town that's going to attract new residents and new wealth, new businesses, a cut to education in the short term will long-term harm the community. And I would just like you to consider where other creative avenues we have in order to recoup some of our losses. Please do not cut the education budget. Our children need that money. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Matthew Sino. I'm a resident, 3609 Park Ave. I'm also a teacher in town. And wow, your heart doesn't really get pumping until you get up here, I'll tell you that much. Wow. I can't imagine. And I'm a PE teacher, so I deal with everyone. Anyways, my wife and I moved here about 4 years ago. We do not have children. However, the only reason we moved to Fairfield was for the educational system and for the schools that my children would be able to go to in the future. Don't get me wrong, I love the beaches, I love getting a tan over the summer, I love everything this town has to offer. However, when we were looking into purchasing in the surrounding towns, the deciding factor and the only thing that mattered was the schools. And I was willing to pay more to live in this town, and I will continue to pay more to live in this town. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. John Convertito, 62 Worcester Road. One, thank you for your time and putting on this forum every year. I came here today to tell you we can do better. Okay? We can do better as Fairfielders. This is not about pitting elderly against school systems, Democrat versus Republican, those who have and those who have not, okay? We can do better in that we can take this $9.2 million and say, yes, we need to cut it now, okay? Or we can buy time. And what we need to do to solve this issue is to create time. I urge you to take the $9.2 million cut out of the budget, okay, with the one caveat. And the one caveat is that we immediately get to work on restructuring our assets in this town, okay? We've started this discussion Thursday night with the Board of Education, okay, as far as consolidation of assets, where we can save money, where we can do that. And I believe if you do that, and we work together as boards of finances and boards of selectmen and boards of education, we can find significant savings, okay? We've started the discussion. We have 2 small elementary schools. Are they being utilized in the right way, okay? Can those children be dispersed to other schools, okay? Can we take central office and put it into one of those vacant buildings? Can you take the Walter Fitzgerald campus and remove that lease and put it into one of those vacant buildings? Can you put the Eunice Postal Center at the senior center? Can you put it at South Pine Creek, okay? We haven't done our homework, okay? And I've sat up there just like you have, okay? We need to do that now, okay? And we need to do it quickly. And I urge you to pass this budget without the $9.2 million, with the caveat that we immediately get to work on looking at that restructuring and that reallocation of assets. And I believe not only will we, excuse me, lower our bottom line going forward, everybody will be better off and better served. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jameson Warren. Unlike most of the people here that moved here for the education system, we did not. We moved here from Chicago, and I am a proud Chicagoan, and we moved against every fiber of our being to move here. Yes, and there were many tears for not being there when that happened. We, again, didn't move here for the schools. We moved here because we had to. My wife's work moved here, so we moved here. We threw a dart at a dartboard and picked a home where the dart landed. The show at Someday will end. It's a talk show. Talk shows end. The thought from me was always, go back home when the show ends. I want to go back home. I can't wait to go back home. Every day, if somebody go, do you like it? I'm going back home. We're going to stay because of the schools. I have no desire to go back home. I only have a desire to live here forever because of the school systems here. And if anything was to change to them, that could change our outlook on where we decide to live. And I don't ever want to see that happen. And that's it.
Bright lights. Good morning. I'll start by saying thank you to you all, like everyone else has, for your time and energy dedicated to our town. I come here can you hear me? Oh, sorry, Jen Jacobson, Alden Street. I do come every year and ask the same thing. And every year we usually get cut, year after year. And we rally and we write more checks and our kids help and we get more volunteers. This year feels a little bit different to me because I feel like this is the one that does break us. We have a long history in Fairfield of trying to keep these painful things from our kids. This one, we're not going to be able to do that. Sorry, I'm sad. I spend a lot of time in Hartford. I read every single bill, every single day, to try to help people understand things that are coming down the pike before we get to days like today. And when we stand here and say, stand up to Hartford, it has to be before days like today. People have to understand things that are going on in DC and Hartford more before we come here. I am going to ask again that you remove the $9 million from the budget like other towns have done, and they're not including it, and restore that $2 million cut. I expect this board to submit testimony on HB 7207 that is having a public hearing on Monday, which is the legislative proposal counter to the governor's education cost sharing grant formula. other town bodies and from other towns submit testimony on these things. I don't see anything from Fairfield. You guys got to put testimony in on that bill. The racial imbalance bill had a public hearing a couple of years ago. One parent, thank you to that parent, submitted testimony on it, and Brenda did too. We know that's a huge issue. Why aren't more people being more involved on these things? And I can help you learn how to do that from home. You don't have to go there. But I expect for this board to put testimony on that bill. I know I'm out of time, so please, I'm wrapping it up. Thank you, and I'm sorry I'm upset.
Christine Vitale, 254 Vernon Hill Road. I've been a taxpayer in Fairfield for over 20 years. I had three children in the school district. My oldest is a sophomore now at Boston College. The Fairfield Public Schools treated her well. I have a sophomore here at Ludlow and a fourth grader at Timothy Dwight. I am a very active parent volunteer. I could speak to you about what many of the teachers in this room have meant for my children, but I will get passionate, so I'm not going to. I think that those who spoke before me did a beautiful job. But I do want to just recognize the teachers that are still here, because we'd be facing an even bigger budget crisis if they had not made the contribution into the state health care last year. So thank you for that. I think that needs, their sacrifice on that needs to be recognized, that they are trying to be part of this solution. In terms of numbers, I thank you for letting us speak to you, and I do not envy the job in front of you, because you don't really have accurate numbers right now, and you're forced to make very big decisions. So like others before me, I'm going to ask that you do accept the Board of Education's budget as it was presented by the board and by the recommendations of the superintendent. I think it's a lean budget. It moves the district forward. I don't think it's excessive. I think it keeps our school district at the caliber that we want it. And that people stay here, move here, and I think that we, Connecticut, Hartford might have forgotten Fairfield. Fairfield can't forget Fairfield. We have to remember who we are, what's important to us, and just continue to advocate for it. You can always, RTM can always make cuts. I would ask you not to be preemptive in that. Thank you.
Hi, Steve O'Brien. I live on Lisbon Drive. I have kids at every level of the school district, and I teach civics and history at Ward. I had 2 or 3 things that I was going to say, but I don't want to break the redundancy rule, so I just wanted to come up and say one thing that has been alluded to, but I want to give some greater emphasis to. Things like the public school system and the public library system here in town aren't just the things that bring people, young families, to Fairfield and keep them here, but they're also things that can give kids that might be otherwise without hope a sense of hope. I teach history and civics in school, but really what I do is I teach kids to see some potential in the future that they have before them. Kids without that have a tendency to make decisions that are more selfish and less about the social contract that some folks have mentioned. So I hope that you'll, as you're doing the work that you're doing, that you think in terms of the big picture here. If we don't pay for these things now, I think that we will end up paying for them later. Thank you. I'll be that brief, but let me say also thank you not just for your service, but also for giving us this forum this morning. Thanks a lot.
Hello, good morning. My name is Kristen Ambrosi. My family lives at 89 Random Road. We just closed on our house in September, and what brought us to Fairfield, like many people, we lived in New Jersey, in Essex County, where the taxes are really, really high, and we actually moved here because the taxes were more affordable. I have 3 children in high school, middle school, and a kindergartner. And the education of those three beings was really the major motivator in us finding Fairfield, and our search was broad across 3 different states. And it's feeling now like this thing that was too good to be true is in fact maybe too good to be true, that Fairfield had it all. And from 10 years in a school system where I dreaded them going to school every day, Fairfield, by comparison, is doing so much right. And the reason why Fairfield is doing so much right is because those programs are funded. And to cut that, as I'm sure all of you agree, would just not be the right decision. So what you're hearing from this entire room, it seems like is a consistent message, and you are our representatives and you are our voice. And so to speak for the people and to speak for the community would be to say, the budget is fine as it is. We need these programs to be funded. The solutions are not simple, but the strategy is to say, this is the budget. Where do we go from there? As opposed to cutting it first. And I'm a painter, I'm a musician, I've been an at-home parent for 16 years, and I'm also a yoga instructor. So I just want to end with one thought, that in my yoga instruction, we talk very much about transforming obstacles into opportunities. And I think that this is our moment as a community to seize the opportunity to say what our values are. This is our opportunity to reflect our values. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to turn the microphone. First of all, I want to thank the public for coming out this morning. This is very enlightening, a very good discussion, and I'm always impressed with the quality of comments and feedback we get from the public each and every year we do that. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to make a few brief comments. I did let it go over a little bit today. I did that because one of my colleagues told me that I spoke a little bit too long at the beginning. So I let this go a little bit over, so I'm going to turn it over to them so they have a little bit more to say. And I'll start with Mrs. Marmion down at my right-hand side.
Well, thank you. I will be brief. This has been a great opportunity to hear from all of you. Thank you very much for coming out today. Thank you for all of your emails. We are reading them. I haven't had a chance to respond to everybody. Hope to get to that. But this is truly an unconventional budget year. And I love what the last speaker just came up and said, which is that we should view this is an obstacle. This is a very tough year, but there is an opportunity. And many of you presented some ideas today that I will take into consideration with my other board members. I do think we need to be creative. I do think we need to stand up to Hartford. I do think there are areas where we can make some tough decisions. There are going to be compromises. Everybody is feeling the pain, but just hearing from the parents, hearing from the seniors, we understand the priorities and will do our best to meet everyone's needs while recognizing that this is not a short-term situation. This is really something we have to look at in the long term. Therefore, that creativity and looking at how we preserve services in this town while keeping those taxes at a reasonable level, that's our challenge. But again, thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you for coming this morning. I'm John Matola. I've been on this board for, I guess, 3 years now, maybe 4 years. I lose track. I was on the Board of Education for 6 years, was its chairman. And, you know, I really understand, I think I understand both sides of the issue that is being presented here today. And, you know, I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. I need to look at the numbers and think about it. I appreciate your comments. I'm glad we had this forum this morning. But we really are in a very, very difficult time. And I do truly believe that we have to start looking at how we do things from the town side, which we've been doing. You know, many of you don't know that, but we have very innovative things that we've been doing to save money on the town side. For example, on our energy costs, we're saving a boatload of money. So we're we're looking at those types of things, but we need to keep looking at them, and the Board of Ed needs to start looking at that, and they have also been looking at those things. So I appreciate your comments. The one thing I wanted to say, because we've been getting emails on it, that Westport's like the panacea of all great things, but, you know, the Finance Board in Westport just cut $1.7 million from the Board of Education budget in Westport. So, you know, they're facing the same issues that we're facing. This town, for the most part, is really well run. It really is. And we can do better, and we're working on doing better. The problems that we're having are really from Hartford. They're not from here, and we're stuck trying to deal with them. And we're going to do our best. This board, I think, more or less agrees on issues more than we disagree. And I think we're going to do the right thing, the fair thing, going forward. So thank you for coming today. And thank you, Chairman Flynn, for running this meeting. I appreciate it.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kevin Hopkins. I have been reading all of your emails. Well, no, I can't say I've been reading all of them. Really, we've been getting deluged with a huge number of emails. There's no way anybody could read all of them, but I have been trying to read as many as I can, and I've seen a lot of emails from both sides. And I also want to say that I reject the claim that we have to make a choice between one side or the other. We can do good things for the entire town. I hope people understand after reading those emails that the problems that we have here in Fairfield with this budget are not of our making. As echoing what Mr. Mottola just said, our town is really well run, and our budget is really well run. And the truth is that if not for the revenue that we're going to be losing from the state of Connecticut that we normally rely on, we would probably be able to deliver a very good budget this year with a very minimal tax increase. But it's because of this loss of state revenue that we're having these problems. And I imagine that a lot of the pain from that is going to have to be spread all around. One thing that I will not do, though, and I made my decision about this before today's meeting, is I won't support any cuts to the education budget. The education budget is going to receive its share of pain already. The amount of revenue that it's going to get from the state that is projected by the Board of Education's budget that they presented to us, I think is overly optimistic. I don't think they're going to get it. So they're going to have about $1 million cut right there. This, meanwhile, their expenses, without really increasing their activity very much, is going to go up by a couple $1 million. So they're going to be under stress already. They're taking their share of the pain, and I hope people understand that. There will be cuts from, I do understand the concerns of our seniors, and there will be cuts to other parts of the budget, which I will be willing to entertain, so that we can keep any increase to as low as possible. We are working very hard. We do understand both of the issues, and I hope people understand that. And thank you for coming this morning.
My name is Jim Walsh. Just as a former background, I grew up in this town. I went to its schools. I settled here and decided to have my family here. I established my business here. I love this town, and I love everything that it stands for. I'd like to, number one, thank the public that came out today on all of your views, many of which I support, on all of your views, because there's some of the similar ones I have myself. This is the toughest budget year I've ever seen, and I've been on the RTM, I've been on the Board of Selectmen, and now I'm on the Board of Finance. And I've been doing this for close to 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this ever. The governor has basically declared war on this town with his funding decreases. I mean, to such a level, it's just completely insane. I think he's insane. And specifically, I think his budget is a cowardly budget, and any legislator who votes for it, whether it's in this town or in this state, is a coward and should be run out of office. This situation, especially with the pension, has been caused by Hartford and should be solved by Hartford. There have been many years where we've had surpluses to the tune of, and put into our rainy day funds, of hundreds of millions of dollars. And not once has that money been moved into the pension fund when they knew they were underfunding it. It has basically been stealing our money for pet projects and other things that they've wanted to do. This year, based on what we're seeing, it's going to be a balancing act. And I hear the views, and I also don't think it's one side against the other, because we're all in this as citizens together in this town. So it's going to have to be a balancing act that all the town bodies have to participate in, and to see where we're going to go and to fight. I agree. I'll be with any committee that wants to fight Hartford on this. I will support any amount of money to fight Hartford with legal dollars on this, because I'm angry about it. I'm impassioned about it, and Hartford should have to deal with their issues up there. I would love if we could, in town of Fairfield, could pass our problems down to somebody else, but you know what? There's nobody else to push them down to, so we have to deal with them here. So as we go through this, it's going to be quite a balancing act. In regards to the education side, I've always supported education in this town. I love the education that this town provides, and mostly that we support the people that need it the most, our special education children. And as we go through this, I don't think we can continue to pit one side against the other. We have to supply a quality education so people either, number one, don't leave, but also that people want to be here or keeps our property values high. I also don't believe that the taxpayers in this town, and that goes from seniors all the way to the first person that's entering this town to buy their first house, can afford a 4.5% tax increase. And I am not going to support that, but I am going to be supporting our schools, but I'm not supporting a 4.5% tax increase. And whatever cuts we need to make, however we have to fight Hartford, we're going to come by the end of this process to something that's not going to do either. So that's all I have right now, and stay tuned.
And then Mr. Becker.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. My name is David Becker. This is, I think, my 8th town budget, and I sort of entered this during the Great Recession, and I think every year has had a lot of difficulties, but certainly this is probably the worst of all of the years. I think everywhere is getting squeezed, and that is most difficult. And I think one of the things I'd want to encourage everybody to do is to get copies, if you don't have them, of the town budget and the Board of Ed budget, and to understand them on your own. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and also a lot of good information, but the misinformation certainly clouds it when people are really more than ever trying to understand everything that's going on. And I'd encourage you to get copies. And if you've got questions, email elected officials, not just with your statement, but with your question, because we will get back and we will ask, and we'll try to get that for you so you can understand what we're all dealing with together as a town. And I think that too is something that we need to really focus on, understanding that we're all in this together and everything affects everyone else. It was mentioned earlier to band together and take it to Hartford, and I agree, and I think Mr. Walsh alluded to maybe even setting some funds aside to join the efforts. There are legal efforts underway. There are questions about whether they can even transfer this pension fund obligation to us, and I think that we need to start with that before we turn money over and probably see it get misspent in some other direction anyways, which is what's been going on. Steps that we have not taken as a town. We've never done that. We've done the right thing. We're actually getting hit as a town in a lot of ways for doing the right thing. You've got money in this account, or you're already okay in this area. Oh, you can afford to do whatever it may be. And therefore we're seeing that. Those are excuses in essence from Hartford as to why they can take money away or ask us to send even more up, which is, I think, really a first. I think the same goes for mandates. There are so many of them that are truly important. They speak to the human element of us. I think special education has a lot of them, but there are others, including with seniors and some other facets of town. But there are also many of them that are so significantly outdated. I think a favorite I've been pulling up this year that isn't big, but it does add up is, advertising in the newspapers for the notices that most people are already getting in their email, no matter what age they are, at no cost for the town, yet we're spending, in some cases, thousands upon thousands every single year doing that. And it's little stuff, but it adds up over time. And alongside it are some more significant items. And I think we've sort of said over time the state's giving us money. So, sure, we're going to keep doing these things. But if they're not going to send the money back, it's time for us to find every way we can stand up and go, then we're not responsible for these things. Thank you. And I would like to know, and this is sort of a misinformation item, and I do want to clarify it a little bit. Some of it is near and dear on my end, with my background, but there's been a lot of comments about looking to other areas within the budget to fund on the education side, and I do want to just note that throughout the budget, you're looking at low single percentages for increases. You're looking at many budgets going down, including public safety, literally seeing flat or negative increases, and those entities are also feeling the squeeze from the state, from a lot of other sources, from the federal level. They're losing a lot of funding sources that for years, particularly post 9/11, that they received that are just gone, and they're not coming back. And now we're finding those budgets at flat or negative, which is really troubling. And I just want people to understand, and they look across it. And they're seeing double-digit increases in public works, including our paving lines, almost double digits in the library, and a double digit in conservation, decreases in their budgets. Significant areas there are not a lot of places to simply just turn to anymore to prop somewhere else out. I do think the $9 million is an area that may have the ability to fix some of that, but just understand kind of what's going on. So, like most here, I'm deeply concerned with and affected by the cuts and the tax increase that was proposed in the first selectman's budget. And I just want to remind everyone that this board, myself, we have consistently over the years delivered responsible budgets. We've made the adjustments, and we've brought forward responsible budgets. I believe we'll continue to do so. And I think this year is no different. And I expect that we will all come together, we will make the adjustments, and produce something that is right for this town, and really helps us move forward. So thank you for everyone for coming out.
Good morning, I'm Chris DeWitt. I'll back this off a little bit. I'm encouraged to see all of you here today. Email is easy, but coming out on a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock is not necessarily easy, so thank you. It's not to say that I don't like getting the emails, don't like seeing the emails, because as I'm sure you might recognize, I am the proud parent of girl-boy twins at Fairfield Woods Middle School. I think it's important to note, that this body, if not sitting up here today, might very well be at that podium today. And I remind you, as our chairman said before, you need to keep us accountable, you need to keep the Board of Education accountable. The long-term effects of what we're going to do and what the dollars are do manifest itself in those two boards. The budget is a sum of its parts, and there are a lot of parts. Mr. Becker just alluded to just a couple. There are a lot of moving parts. There's libraries, there's, please, go online and pull down the budget. I forgot to tell the lady, she asked me for a copy of the budget. It is online on the website, please look at it. There are a bunch of moving parts. And please be respectful of each other's values and concerns in this process and in this budget. We certainly are. these 9 people, are very respectful of the whole process. We make decisions that have long-term impacts. I've gotten a bunch of emails saying, Ma, we should have never done Penfield Pavilion over. Well, you know what? We did it. We made the commitment at the time. We did it. It's in the past. It's there. It's supporting our town. We have to remember that we have decisions we've made already and decisions moving forward. The budget process is kind of like this room today. I walked in here at 9 o'clock, and there were 2 ladies, and they're still here, all by themselves. And from that point to this point, this room is filled up, and it's lessened. Look around. You know, an hour and a half ago, this place was packed. That, for me, is the budget process. People come in on their given night, and they talk about their budget, and they leave. Well, I have to tell you, this is a 12-month process for this body and for all the town officials and for all the town department heads. This is a marathon, these budget things. It's not a sprint. And even though we sit here once a year in March and have these discussions, which are wonderful, and they set the tone for the budget, this is a marathon, people. And I hope you all become involved. And I'll throw out one thing. I think we should all tell our first selectman that we need a long-term plan. And I believe on the website, thank you, selectmen are looking for volunteers for a long-term plan committee. Please, overrun that committee, overrun those people with recommendations and names. This is a structural issue. It's long-term. Changes are inevitable, as frankly are the continued demands from Hartford. They're inevitable. So, as one lady put it, or one gentleman said, let's get the bus ready and this time point it toward Hartford and go tell them that we're not going to accept it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll have to say good afternoon. My name's Jim Brown, and I also want to thank you for being here. And I guess it's my turn not to be repetitive, but what I found very enthusiastic today is how well informed we are as a town on what's going on. I'm not surprised. I just want to point it out. We know what's going on in Hartford. I mean, it is a curveball, but it's not a baseball. To my Chicago Fun buddy down there, it's a missile, and they want it to be a direct hit. And we're going to have to take that missile, turn it around, and send it right on back up there. I mean, it is outrageous that they didn't do their job that we elect them to do, and then they just passed the buck. I mean, it's outrageous. And this energy and this enthusiasm that was in this room today, we need to turn it, and I'm telling you, it's going to be a long battle. Because, and we have to support our legislatures too. But this will not go away because they've turned this thing into such a fiscal mess, they don't have any answers. They're bankrupting the state, and their ideas are bankrupt. They have a model that will never work. They changed the model in the 90s, and they kept it. And this is the result. So, we do need to come together. Let's come together. Republicans, Democrats, everyone that agrees, and take this on. And let's work with our state legislatures to do so. You know, as far as the town, yes, we can't accept a 4.5% increase, but at the same time, we need to find a way to support our school system, right? And I don't believe it's one or the other. We've done this before. We'll figure it out. We'll take the information that we have, the best information before we make the decision on what we're going to do, and we'll get it done, because that's what we've always have done in this town. We understand up here the importance of a strong school system. I've had 4 daughters that have gone through it, from Osborne all the way through. I have 3 graduated from this school. I spent a lot of time at these schools. I thought I would never get out of Osborne. I was about the youngest father in Osborne, and then all of a sudden I was around the oldest father. Okay, I have one daughter left. She's a sophomore here. And you know what I love? I love watching their minds develop. And it is because of this school system. I also, though, I mean, it's the tax increase, a lot of it, most of it is because of Hartford. But I like these ideas I'm hearing today about changing the structure, changing the assets. I mean, we can do that. We can do that. We have a lot of smart people, so we'll get through this budget season, but there's going to be another one quicker than we want to admit. And in between these next 360 some odd days, we have to take our case up to Hartford and tell them to back off. So, thank you for being here. Keep the emails coming. I did check. Since we've been sitting here, I did get like 6 or 7 more, which is fine. We read them all, and keep them coming. Thanks for your support.
All right. I hope to not break my own rule and be redundant. One item I want to address the emails. Thanks for all of them. They're really, we do look at them. We don't always respond. We get hundreds of them. One of the things that's really funny, my wife pointed this out, is a lot of the emails start, "We are the proud parents of." And my wife said, if we wrote that email, we'd have to say, "We're usually the proud parents of." And there are some times where, you know. That being said, I want to echo a lot of my colleagues' comments regarding Hartford and regarding our situation up there. We are working very hard with our state delegation. We do have a delegation of very committed state representatives that are fighting on our behalf. But I think our voices need to be heard, and our board's voices need to be heard, and they need to understand what their irresponsibility is doing to what is otherwise a wonderful community. I do echo the sentiments regarding our Board of Education and the job that they do in the education quality. I'm the father of 3, one graduating college next year, one graduating high school next year, and then the little guy trailing far behind in 5th grade, so I will be a customer for a very long time. And I'm told his is the largest class and is causing class size issues, so I am very sorry for that.
All your fault.
Yeah, all my fault. You know, it's interesting. There was a lot of talk about empirical data and taking a look at things and about 2 sides and pitting each other. You know, as I sit here, I don't see that. I have never had a conversation with a senior or somebody that has somebody who's not in the school system anymore that says they're in cut services or cut programs or cut this out. What they've advocated for is, are we doing everything we can do to be efficient in how we provide those programs? Are those programs reaching the children at a reasonable cost base that is long-term affordable for this town? As a lot of my colleagues said, this is not a one-year issue. We'll get through this budget cycle. However we will, we'll get through this budget cycle. But the reality is, and I do this for a living, I'm a reformed chief financial officer, and what I do now is I go into companies that have run aground, and I help restructure and reorganize them. And they haven't run aground because they don't have a great product. They haven't run aground because they don't have great people. They haven't run aground because they don't have a good service that people need to buy. They've run aground because the economic model no longer works. Because it hasn't been adjusted. Because it was the same old, same old. Guess what? I agree with a lot of the comments. For what this town is right now, it is pretty well run. The budget process is pretty tight. The budgets are not extraordinary or extravagant. The department heads that put them together are committed and dedicated and valued. And our workers, whether it be in the Board of Education, whether it be our friends in the police department, the fire department, or DPW, they're all highly skilled and well valued. But guess what? The economic model is changing. And unless we address that, and we change with that, and we begin the dialogue, as Mr. Confrontito pointed out in his comments, right? We're just going to be back here and having these same issues again. It's a cheap way out to say we're going to cut programs. It's a cheap way to do things. And yes, in this budget year where it's really tight, right, that's very difficult. But that doesn't mean the problem goes away. We're going to go to Hartford. We're going to fight. We may even push this back this year, but guess what? It's coming again. They haven't declared bankruptcy, but they're basically bankrupt. This is a long-term structural issue that they haven't had here. Now, largely due to a lot of the work of my colleagues, we've avoided the similar issues because unlike Hartford, we are funding our long-term liabilities. We are funding our debt. We are being prudent with our investments in town assets. But now we're being asked to pick up the ball for them. And while we don't want to do it, and we're going to fight it with everything we have, there's big issues there, and they're going to have to turn somewhere. And I'm afraid they're going to continue to turn to Fairfield County, because that's where the money is. And they see it, and they want it. And they weren't willing to make the tough decisions. Now, there's been comments made here today about the budgets for schools and why is the school under attack. Quite frankly, I don't think the school's under attack, and I'm not saying I support anything and I haven't made any decisions, right? The school system represents all in, without the debt service, about 57% of the budget, the total budget. The debt service and the retiree benefits that we have to pay are over 13%. That means that 70% of the budget is in those two items. The rest of the items represent 28% of the budget. Public service only represents, my glasses are bad, are 10%, or $30 million for your police and fire. DPW, Public Works, is $15 million. We could take that entire $14 million hit and you'd have to zero out Public Works. How does that sound? That's how tough it is. So I don't think anybody is targeting, certainly nobody on this board is targeting any specific area. Mr. Brown and I looked it up before this meeting. Increase in education spending,
22 million since 2010.
$22 million in the last 7 years in the increase in educational spending. There hasn't been a year we've been here where the educational spending numbers come down, and that's a good thing. But it's just, we're not defunding it. Nobody's saying defunding it. They're concerned about the rate of growth, and that's what we're all talking about. I have full confidence in our board. Our board works very well together, not Republican and Democrat, but for the best financial situation or solution for the town. And I think we'll try to continue to do that. So I want to thank everybody for coming out. Emails are open. Have a good day. Get ready for what I hope is a little snow. And thank you.